So basically, 911 G, yeah, there's not a 911, see you later. The Porsche Cayman GT4, the original one. I can't believe it's nearly been 10 years since this car came out. Cayman GTS, that was previously your flagship car. 335 brake, about 4.9 to 60, that kind of thing. In this car, they've got the 911 Carrera S engine, rotated it, modified it a little bit to make sure it can go in. We've lost about 80 kilos of weight. We've got GT3 completely adjustable suspension at the front. We've got bespoke suspension at the rear. You've got amazing rev matching. We've got plenty of carbon fiber 918 seats in this particular one. So it's quite a different car, despite that extra 50 brake horsepower and losing a little bit of weight. There's quite a few differences. It should drive pretty differently. I've very recently driven a Lotus Evora S, and in a lot of ways, the Evora 400s and S's and things are actually very comparable to the Cayman. So it's going to be quite exciting to really compare those. I don't think I'm really here to answer the question of, is it any good? Is it worth the hype? Is it worth the money? The fact is, we all know that these are absolutely sensational and probably one of the greatest Porsches ever made. But my genuine question, the thing I want to find out about this is, I'm a believer of slow car fast is often actually more fun on the UK public road than having a really fast car that you can't really drive properly. If this has got track orientated suspension and that second gear, that famous second gear, can get up to 85 miles an hour without you needing to change up, does that kind of spoil the fun on most typical B roads? I want to find out, and I'm incredibly excited. Let's get going. This is one of those cars where you don't need to be driving it quickly to find out what it's about. There are very few cars that you get in and the first few meters, every single control feels right. And the last car that made me feel like this was the Lotus Evora S that I drove a week ago. I think I did one gear change and moved the wheel and was like, that's what it's about. And the Cayman GT4 is in exactly the same category. Just incredible. I'm going to jump straight in with the biggest surprise for me. A feature that I just didn't think would be game changing at all, and I think is the thing I'm most impressed with this car, is the rev matching. No matter what gear you're in, if you're in sport mode and you drop it, it will perfectly match the revs, and it doesn't interrupt the flow of the car. Look, watch this. So, in fourth, and bam, third, exactly right. Now if I'm at 40 miles an hour in fifth, and I'm going to go to second from fifth gear at 40. Ready? So how does it know which gear I'm going to go for? Crazy. Third, second. It's mad. But what it allows you to do is, you're pressing on, you're having some fun, you come down towards a bend, you just pick the gear you know you should be in, the car continues flowing, and you're already ready to just crack on again. It's absolutely superb. I cannot understand the science and how quickly they manage to get to the right revs anyway. No matter what rev you're in, it's just there. This car, for me, has already found one of my favourite sweet spots of any powertrain, actually, because I will sing it till the cows come home. I think there is too much power in too many supercars and sports cars today for UK roads and for most roads. And just as you start having fun, it's kind of got to be over unless you're going to be a complete bell piece. With this kind of power to weight ratio, it is undeniably fast. You know, low 4 seconds to 60. No one's saying anything needs to be quicker than that. But it does allow you time to enjoy yourself, and it doesn't quite feel like 400 horsepower of, you know, turbocharged Subaru where it kind of comes in, whamming you and launching you back into your chair. It's very linear, and it doesn't ever feel scary or overwhelming. I don't feel like at any point when I'm about to dump my foot that I might have the back end squirrel out on me. I just feel like, yep, everything can take it. This chassis, these wheels, these tyres, everything can take the power this car has. don't know if my Volvo could have done that overtake so well. Oh my God. I just snicked it into third. Nothing. Everything's fine. My God. So, this power, for me, an ultimate sweet spot, and I absolutely love this engine. It sounds incredible, and I'm going to compare things to this Evora because I think it's a really good competitor. That made me laugh so much. It was really, really kind of supercar silly. But I'm not saying it would grate on me in the end, but I'm not certain that it wouldn't. You know, it's quite a loud, gruff, gravelly V6, and hilarious for a short drive. And I'm not sure what I would think of it if I drove hours and hours and hours with that engine. Whereas this flat six, sorry, it doesn't sound like one of those things that would do your head in. It's just, I can't describe it. It's sonorous. It's beautiful. And when you're just taking it easy and you close the exhaust and you take it out of sport mode and you're in 6th gear, everything's fine. It's not kind of there all the time either. Now, I've spoken about the rev matching, but I've kind of not spoken about this gearbox. And it is an absolute standout for this car. It is by far the nicest Porsche gearbox I've ever experienced. My general impressions before we talk objectively about what we have in here. Personally, until very recently, I've never really been that bothered by Porsche as a brand, right? I get that they're good, but they haven't stirred much of the soul for me. And I kind of used to find their interiors a little bit uninspiring, a little bit kind of functional, and there wasn't kind of like any Italian flair or supercar excitement to it. But the truth is, I got in this car, in this spec, with all the carbon everywhere and everything else, and having just driven that Evora S a week ago, my God, you really appreciate the quality in here. Every single surface is superb. I mean, really sublime. Lovely Alcantara headlining, these carbon seats, the leather quality is great. The dash up here, I love the metal kind of trim around the air vents and things. The switches all feel really nicely machined and they've got good travel. The steering wheel is just the right size. And you know, for that fun and that flair I spoke about, we don't have door handles anymore. We have these little red, we have these little red ribbons, I'm going to call them right now. Everything is great, and it really makes you appreciate that there's a more mature feel to a Porsche than having maybe a more exotic choice. Now, going on to what we've actually got, the problem with saying anything about a Porsche is they're all bloody different, frankly. They're pretty much like fingerprints. There's no two cars the same. And so I can't really make a general blanket statement. What's interesting though is feature-wise, this particular one, it doesn't really have that many things. You know, cruise control, aircon, it's got the bass sound system, not Bose, the bass sound system, which sounds really good by the way. Not really that many toys as such. This one has been completely optioned out with the Alcantara stuff, the carbon fibre, the chrono pack, the leather dash and things like that. And ultimately those are the things that when I got in made me go, oh, okay, wow. Porsche do really get how to make beautiful interior. So for a car like this, you're not buying it for adaptive cruise, are you? And these kinds of seats, I don't think you're going to get in these on a winter's day and be absolutely freezing, because most of it is that kind of Alcantara suede material anyway. So I think you can get away with those things. Overall, delightful place to be. I'm one of those people where I'm not really bothered by how old a head unit is, and unless it's from the mid-2000s, I don't really care too much. That wouldn't bother me when driving a GT4, and it wouldn't be a reason for me to go for a 918 GTS instead. I think it's aged really, really well in here. So I think we should get back on the road and get going again. Now, one of my main concerns that I said to people when they're saying, oh, I'm driving a Cayman GT4 next week, and they're like, oh, what do you reckon? And I tell them how great the car is, but I've said this whole second gear to 85 miles an hour thing, I'm not sure that's going to belong on the road, to be honest. That's my main concern. And all the owners kept telling Steve, trust me, this won't be a problem, do not worry about it. You don't need to take it to 7,800 up to 85 in second. And it's true, he showed me, he said change up at 5,500. I wasn't aware of the speed at the time, but it's not crazy. But it doesn't bog you down in third. Third doesn't say, what are we doing here? Like, where's the power? We're stalling. So the reality is you can still have fun. You can throw it around. And if you take this car on track, which is, let's be honest, the point of the GT4, that's not going to be a problem to you at all. You're going to be absolutely laughing. This gear change is absolutely stunning. It's a short throw. It's so precise. It's an absolute delight to use. If I had to make it my perfect gearbox, I'd want it to be slightly heavier. I like a slightly heavier gearbox that feels a little bit more connected to the gearbox itself. Sing it with me, everybody. The Mazda MX-5. I'll always love that gearbox. But I can see why, if you're absolutely smashing through these gears on track, this is a really good weight and it's ridiculously efficient. My next positive surprise out of this car was I kind of thought that GT badge would lean things towards being a bit too serious for the road, and that ultimately I'll be saying to you, you should get a GTS for this. But it took me a long time to even notice the suspension and the ride, and I think that's always a compliment to it being completely acceptable and comfortable. There are some cars you go over your first bump in the road and you just think, God, this would do my nut in, you know. Overall though, it is this chassis that makes the Cayman the Cayman. And as Steve said, this exact car tuned this way for the GT4 handling and everything, if it had 200 less horsepower, he said, I'd absolutely love it still. It is sublime. It is incredible. And I'll be honest, I was one of these people that used to think that mid-engine cars could be a little bit scary. Like, oh, is it going to be a bit snappy on the edge and the limit and things? But the way they've designed these cars and tuned them, it's so confidence inspiring. It hasn't at any point communicated with me that there's instability. Steve took me out last night and he showed me a bit more of what this car can do. He's got a hell of a lot of track experience. Across multiple cars, he's done well into 200 track days, so he really knows how to pedal. And again, it was absolutely sensational. And I still could feel that he wasn't reaching the limits of the car. Is this one of those cars where you have to be driving like a complete bell end for it to be fun? Because there are some of those where nothing really feels like it's happening until you're going a bit too fast. No, that's the other thing that I was quite surprised by. I have certainly been in cars where that's the case. And with this, it's the tactile steering. He uses the word telepathic. And I thought, is that one of those journalism cliches when people say telepathic? Because I felt good feedback. I've had steering that feels instinctive, but it's like the second you turn that wheel and you hope to be somewhere, it's almost like you're there quicker and even better than you hoped you'd be. I mean, I can't describe it. It is absolutely amazing. So, it doesn't matter what speed you're doing, this car doesn't let you forget you're in something fun. It doesn't let you forget you're in something special and that there's a big premium over a GTS. Now, I haven't driven a GTS, so I can't tell you with lightning confidence, and that's what the comment section's for. People down there will be able to tell you the differences they felt. But knowing the changes that have gone into this, I would not be surprised if there's quite a difference between how these drive. The other main thing that makes a Cayman is that they are far easier to live with than a lot of their rivals. Practicality, again, superb. Have a look at the footage right now. I've got a giant heavy hard case next to the car and how little space that takes up in the front boot. And the rear area swallowed another camera hard case, a tripod, a bag with room for more. So easily enough, and better than the Evora that I drove. I thought there was going to be more sound deadening and it was going to be a little bit calmer and quieter in here. But I think that's just because I'm thinking every Cayman is supposed to be like that. And I actually imagine that's pretty much what the GTSs and the S's and everything else are like. And this car has lost about 80 kilos over one of those. So I think they lost a bit of sound deadening, which is fine. It's what the car's for. I always like to go on about reliability, don't I? If you know me and the channel, reliability PTSD is something I've lived with from a lot of cars going wrong and stinging me quite badly. And I know that Porsche generally are a very reliable manufacturer. More modern ones are. For quite a while now, they've been pretty damn solid. Things like the Taycan currently, they're having a nightmare with electrics and all sorts of issues, but ICE Porsches are pretty solid. But the great thing, which I'm really impressed by, is that Steve's telling me this is a 9-year-old car, about 28,000 miles, and Porsche will give a full Porsche 2-year warranty to any car that's under 15 years old. But it has to pass something like a 118-point check from them. And if it fails anywhere, you can fix it with them, they'll do the work, and then they'll say, right, this is now a car that we've inspected and we know is healthy, here's your 2-year warranty. I think he said it's around £1,300 to £1,400, maybe £1,500 for those 2 years. But how nice is that, to own a car with peace of mind, like you bought a new car that's 9 years old and is a performance car? And that, to me, peace of mind and ownership experience is just as important for me as how good a car is to drive and sit in and look at, because I've been that guy that everything else added up on paper and it's ruined my joy of owning something when it keeps you having headaches. His experience with Porsche so far has been amazing. They've really learned about looking after customers properly. It makes you see why there's such an army of fanatics for the brand. So, the ultimate question for me is, what would I do with similar money or the money for one of these? Well, if I comfortably had, call it about 60,000 for a Cayman GT4, and I was going to go on track quite a lot and everything else, this is pretty much the car to beat. The reality is, I'm a big fan of cars that behave their best on the road and perhaps could do with a bit of tightening up for track driving, but that's because I've done about 3 or 4 track days in my life, so that balance works better for me. A GTS of this age, you're going to get into those from memory about 40 something, 45 I think was when those start coming in, so there's quite a big difference. I personally would still go and drive one just to make sure that the differences were really that vast. I think I'd be very happy. I do keep thinking about that Lotus Evora S, and that was about a £35,000 car, and when you get close to the budget for one of these, you're getting into Evora 400, 410s, 410 Sports, and there's something slightly supercar special about those. They just have an extra wow factor, and the ride quality was just incredible. The steering was beautiful, basically nearly as good as this. And I'd have to think really hard. I don't think I have the concrete answer, to be honest, not to cop out or anything, but it's something I'd have to think about and probably go for a drive in a 410 or 400 around that kind of bracket. Overall, I've been simply blown away by these. There's no terrible common problems that send me running for the hills. You've got the warranties, the comfort is decent actually, like really surprisingly good comfort. I think that kind of concludes. Just a huge thank you to Steve, because long-term viewers of the channel may remember that I drove an R26R and a Trophy R 3 years ago, and as an absolutely tiny channel, it was amazing to have someone reach out and offer me 2 such unicorn cars to drive. Just a quick bit to add, to say our thank yous as well. Steve had a nightmare time with Renault, really disappointing. They wanted to take the car off him for 5 months off the road and weren't going to give him a courtesy car with a very niche issue he had at one point with his Trophy R. Just not good enough. And in comparison, and particularly Curtis and Dylan at the Nottingham Porsche have been outstandingly good. They really looked after him, and he specifically said, could you give them a shout out? So if you've got anything fun that you want to see on the channel, or even just, you may not think it's that special, but you'd like to see on the channel, get in touch, because I'd love to do it. And it's people like this that actually give me something to do and give you stuff to watch. Please do like and subscribe, join the Patreon, and see you on the next one.